super excited to welcome you all again to our Tuesday at 12 series. We're in for a super treat today, something we've been really looking forward to. We've had Machado Mijiga here with us today. He's kind of doing like a little mini residency. He's working with the music theory class and the oral skills class, and then is here to perform for us for the noon hour. So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Machado Mijiga, Alex Meltzer, and their band Left of Center.
That was all improvised. Just so you know, yeah. I guess we don't have a ton of time, but I figured to leave just a little bit. I guess we have 10 minutes or so. I'm assuming a lot of the questions will probably be for Alex because he's doing a bunch of different things. I will be here for oral skills, so if you are going to be in this class after here, just save your question for that time. That way we can have anybody who has to leave ask questions. But if you have any questions about this performance, feel free to chime in and give Alex the mic if he wants to answer some stuff.
I'm curious how your rig started out. Like,
Yeah, well, okay, we got a microphone. Let's pass it around. Awesome, thanks. So how it got started out, you buy one sampler and then you buy a second one, and then you start putting them together, and then you buy another one, and then you start doing that more and more, until you end up with a table full of crap like I got right here. But yeah, each thing kind of has like a utility or like serves a purpose in what's going on here. The three, I was kind of thinking about this before I got here, the three kind of like main things that are happening here is like make some things that make a sound, right? And then there's things to sequence the sound, so to put it on a timeline. And then there's like, the last thing is like things that can affect the sounds, right? I mean, I can just give like a kind of basic overrun of what I got going on here. So I have this keyboard, and then I got this other tiny keyboard down here. And the bass all go into this machine right here. And then, so pretty much this is like my main brain of everything as far as like my samples and my sounds go. So, and then on this thing as well too, I have like pretty much just like a bunch of samples that I've pre-recorded. This is just like a project that I just add stuff to, take it away. But yeah, I have like a bunch of them, I don't know. I kind of cycled through some of them, but I guess it's off right now. But oh wait, right? So I can, it's got like a bunch of different crap on there. Some of them are like samples that I've made and stuff. But anyway, so pretty much all sound goes through this thing, and then it goes into this effect pedal, which affects all the sounds. And then right here, I have a loop pedal, or loop station thing, so that any sound that I want to grab a loop of, I can grab a loop of here. And I have 5 different slots for loops, so I can like play a bass note, put it on here, play some keys, put it on there, play a sample, put it on there. And then pretty much these 3 things just are like for effects. Different filters and delays and reverbs. This one's kind of like a granular synthesizer, so I don't know if y'all have talked about that. It grabs little pieces of the buffer of the recording and then does weird stuff to it. And then this one's just like a master effect, delays and reverbs and stuff. One other extra thing that I have going on here is, so when I record a loop into here, say if I just play, let's see. So what that did automatically is grab a BPM of just that one note, which if I can look at it, it's telling me it's 155.4. So what that's doing is, also I have a MIDI cable coming out of here that will send that 155.4 BPM pretty much to like these couple machines over here, so that these effects are in time. They're like tempo synced, right? So like if I have a quarter note delay on that thing, it'll be to the BPM of whatever I did here. Yeah, so that's been something that I've been kind of messing around with lately too. Same thing with this one. There's a lot of just like time-based things that can give like some rhythmic propulsion to everything that I like using. But yeah, pretty much that's like it. It's just like making sounds, sequencing them, and then affecting them. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I noticed like there's several moments where, you know, there's like an established
tempo, and then some of you guys, like especially at the beginning, Alex creates like a loop, and then Machado kind of like, you solo in over his time, and then there's moments where you establish a groove, and then you kind of create something over that, and then it trades back to Machado, and he's soloing over it. And I notice as well, within that, there's a lot of like rhythmic warping and phrasing that kind of goes on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah.
Can you describe what's going on in your heads, like in order to keep tempo, but also like how do you trade that in real time?
For sure. I mean, I think I'll kind of give my perspective on it. I'll let Machado give his perspective, because if you don't know, I'm sure you've already witnessed that Machado is a total polymath at rhythm. And if you ask him to do whatever odd number over odd number polyrhythm, he'll do it. But, you know, one thing with, I'm not that skilled in the rhythmic vocabulary. So you know, for me, it's like, I'm not counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, I'm trying to hear things in like bigger phrases a lot of the time. So, and then within that, other like rhythmic possibilities can happen. So, I mean, which, you know, if I record a loop onto here, it is going to be in 4/4, but, you know, if I just establish a pulse, Machado can, like in that, he was definitely like hinting at other subdivisions of time versus 4/4. So, along with that, I try not, in this circumstance, to think of it as 4/4 as much as just like a 1-beat pulse. Or like a larger phrase, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like if you start getting into, in this kind of context, like 4 and 8 bar phrases like too much, then you kind of lose the like washy nature of the like tempo and stuff. Yeah.
For sure.
I'll let Machado say.
So this project is essentially, it's like a fusion of all of Alex's skills and then like my weird neurodivergence with rhythm, which is essentially that it's kind of like, in the last class I used a bunch of analogies. My analogy is this is essentially bowling with those bumpers, because Alex is looping things that are synced to a global tempo that's across all of these devices if it's sequenced, but the micro timings within each thing are all over the place, and depending on how Alex is hearing the pulse or what I'm playing, he may play something totally different on bass or keys. So we know that it will equal 4 measures of 4/4 or 2 measures of 4/4 or whatever. But in terms of all the specific hits or the things, there are many moments where Alex actually plays something that's like slightly not within the subdivision of an 8th note. So then I start thinking 16th notes or some kind of odd, like you kind of split the difference. Like there's certain places where I kind of let that become a part of the tune, where we have some songs that we've recorded where like Alex is sequencing something that is synced to a global tempo, so we at least know that if I am having trouble hearing where he's hearing, because we also have to establish like who's hearing, what are we hearing the pulse as? Is like this a quarter note, or is this an 8th note, or is this a quintuplet, like a dotted quarter note quintuplet, or whatever. So whatever we might be on different pages, but essentially I know how long it's going to reset, and I've just over the years gotten to the point where a pulse is a pulse, and no matter what you're subdividing it as, being able to just keep the optimist brain of like, I'm just hearing this pulse, and most of the time my left foot was just going for the whole thing, like when we were doing anything that was truly rhythmic, and then we'd have some moments where we were playing free, which was more that Alex, he like took off a loop and then was just playing bass or playing synth or playing samples, and sometimes I'll take the sample and turn it into like, hear the timing of the sample, because a lot of these samples are coming from pre-recorded music, and some of them are being synthesized by him, or he made them in Ableton, or with some other machine. So there's an internal time for each sample, and sometimes deciding if that timing is a groove, or if it's just a free thing that kind of sits underneath the mix, and we just kind of go through and go into the song that way. There's just like so many different possibilities, but essentially it latches on him understanding his own setup, and me understanding or making sense of what's going on in some way, shape, or form. The only thing that I'm thinking about in terms of his setup is I was actually, through this hole on my cymbal, I was looking at Alex like playing keyboard and bass, because there were certain things, some of his effects are synced, like the delays for this, some of them are triplet based, some of them are based off of like a certain rhythmic subdivision to whatever the meter is. And because I actually own and use almost everything here. We have like all the same gear. I just don't use this, but I have another groove box kind of thing that I can use because I understand how all of his gear works for the most part. I don't know how he's specifically using it, but I can tell when he's manipulating certain parameters, and I can sometimes tell, like while we're playing, is he setting a loop or is he just playing something and trying to figure it out within the NPC, which is where it's kind of where the brain where everything lives. And there's times where I can tell he's trying to figure out how he wants to create a world around what I'm playing, and sometimes I'll let him play and figure out a world that I can create around that. So we're both operating within constraints, but the cool thing is we can, like, one of us can release while the other person is playing. There are a few moments where I was just playing drums and Alex was deciding what instrument he was going to start creating the rest of the atmosphere with. Like, he was playing bass for a little bit. And there's one point where it was just me and a sample playing, like an atonal sample.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's like we use those moments to form a new idea. He has technically a limited number of things to work with here, but in terms of the fact that he can take any sample and put it into any key and also modify it to tempos and sync it with different things in here, it's like saying we have 26 letters in our alphabet, but with an infinite number of words. Like, the amount of, even just the samples that he used for the last session that we did, he used many of them here, but they sounded totally different because he was affecting them with one of these other devices that affects tempo or pitch. Some of them are granular and like that creates its own rhythm. So then the internal rhythms of the granular effects or any of the other delays, sometimes I'll make that rhythm the new pulse, and then he'll change the pulse to whatever that new rhythm is if he hears it. And if he doesn't hear it, or if he hears something else, then I'll just either cycle to another thing, or sometimes we'll just throw each other ideas. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or no, yeah.
Any other questions about that? Yeah.
I was wondering, how did you guys meet and how long have you been working together?
We met a few years ago.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, it was probably, we met
Right.
probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've been in similar circles, but we haven't necessarily done a bunch of stuff together until this last year. I mean, I think I had Alex, I did PDX Jazz Festival in 2020, literally right before the pandemic, and I had Alex on that. Alex is part of a bunch of really cool projects, and then also doing his own thing as a producer, and is, as you can tell, also a fantastic bassist, plays upright bass, you know, and did the whole orchestra jazz band thing. We both kind of did that, went through music school, but we met, I think, it was like 6 years ago. We collaborated a couple times really briefly, but until really this last year, I kind of hit Alex up and was like, we should do something, because he was talking about, essentially, I mean, when you work with electronics, a lot of times you do have like a set, you figured out your songs and you know how a certain way to do them and you work out music that way, but it's cool to approach it this way. And I was trying to nudge Alex to really figure this out, because he has both the knowledge and the gear to essentially do what we're doing now, which is like taking things that should theoretically be used to make super framework-based music and doing it in a totally free way. And he has like another group with Sam Selly, who's like this turntablist, and they fully improvise as well. So it's like turntables, but it's not just record scratching. It's like he's using the turntable to send MIDI, and he's sending like keyboard and all sorts of other data to Sam, who's then scratching, and some of those scratches are affecting rhythm, but sometimes the scratches are affecting other parameters. So this idea of taking electronics and like making it just another instrument. I mean, essentially, I have a drum set, and he has a sampler set. Like, it's kind of the same principle, where each one of these things, I could just hit one cymbal, and that's the instrument. And he could just use any one of these things by itself and create sound, but the choir of all these instruments is like his language. And I have all the same gear that he does in this setup, except for the Akai, but I would use it all probably totally differently if I was using it, and the same thing with anybody else who has this stuff, which is what's cool. It's like 3 people could have a guitar, the same guitar, but the things that they do on it is so different. And so I'm just like, I think it's been a great chance for us to meet and like really develop this language. And I think we've been playing in this group for about 4 or 5 months. Yeah, and this is technically, we've done some pretty small low-key shows, but this is one of the few formal performances that we've done, and then this year we're planning on doing
Yeah, I think this is
a
our
lot
first
more.
gig where I have a monitor too.
Yeah. Yeah, we've just been doing like these kind of dinner set gigs that are supposed to be like jazz, but we're just kind of doing this through really quietly. Yeah, half as loud, and I'm using like little brushes and thin rods. But it's the same concept, like all the same ideas.
But yeah, here I'll say. So yeah, I got my degree in upright bass, like jazz stuff. But I was like, really started making beats like in high school, or like end of high school, and then really dug in college. And now I work as like a recording engineer and producer at a studio. But yeah, I always wanted to, once I was making a lot of beats and playing a lot of beat sets and stuff like that, I really wanted to incorporate like all the, fun things about like actually playing music that I did in school and stuff. That seemed to like, that I had to like figure out how to translate that feeling to be able to like actually react with a real musician, instead of like, and like understanding if I'm playing with like if I'm playing with like a bass player or a keyboard player, like what key are they playing in? Like what notes could potentially work? If I have a sample, like how can I manipulate the harmony of the sample to kind of like fit in, I use a lot of like, if I have a sample that's in like a major key, and I can throw that over like the relative minor type things, and I'll kind of try to think of like harmonic stuff like that as well too, using different modes on top of samples and introducing notes that could like give a little bit of rub and stuff like that. So all that to say that, yeah, like really just wanted to figure out how to get this like electronic producing thing like into the improvised music zone. And I'm not the first to do it, but I wanted to figure out my own way to like really just do stuff like this. And yeah, it's been really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh yeah.
Do you ever play the saxophone anymore? And would you ever play over something that he does with the saxophone?
He probably has before. I don't know.
Yeah, I also do a solo setup that's kind of like this, and I play saxophone still, but I have a fully digital MIDI saxophone that's, so now I'm like experimenting with sending that, instead of having it as an instrument, sending it as MIDI through this whole setup and kind of running a whole, like I have a pedal board for acoustic saxophone stuff, but for this sort of stuff, I've considered doing that in this sort of setting too. And then I might do as a solo artist, and I am part of this group in Portland that's kind of like an art collective where there is a drummer and there's like a full band, but there's also somebody who's doing, this person Cam Smith, who does a similar thing to Alex, but in his own way. And then in that world, I'm also, actually it's where what Alex is saying comes in for sure, is I'm playing a tonal instrument, and I'm also dealing with I have a pedal, the freeze pedal essentially, that works like a sustain pedal, and I'm creating harmonies on saxophone, so I'm having to think about not only what harmonies I'm creating relative to, there's a guitarist and a keyboard player and somebody running samples, so we're all some of the samples are atonal, some of the samples are pitched, and some of them are rhythmic, so there's some times where I need him to feed me a certain tempo, and then I'll match the tap tempo with my pedal board, and then think about the chords that I'm stacking, and then I also have a whammy pedal that's attached to my sostenido pedal, or my sustain pedal, so I can create a chord and then pitch the chord up or down within a 2-octave range in both directions, controlled with my foot. So yeah, it's a Digitech, but it's also run through an Eventide H90, which has also got its chord structure. Yeah, it's a cool pedal.
For your digital thing, do you use the Akai or like an Aerophone?
I have an Imeo, which is it's an actual saxophone, like a soprano saxophone with MIDI housing. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
They're really hard to get. It took me like a year and a half to get one, but super useful because it actually uses real fingerings and spring action, so it doesn't feel, you don't deal with kind of the weird static sensitivity thing that you do with Akai stuff. But yeah, I recommend it. It's a nice horn, but you have to know a little bit about what synth you want to run it through or what you want to run it. You can use like a soft synth, like I use like this thing called Respiro, which is just a plug-in that you can get. It doesn't even need to be on a DAW, it's just a standalone on either an iPad or a computer. And you can run it through that. You just need that and like a preamp, and then run the preamp through an amp. Then it's essentially like a guitar. Yeah.
You'll have to remind me, are you guys like touring or are you based in Portland? Do you have
Yeah,
like
we're
other
based
live
here.
events going on?
We're based here, yeah. The
Okay.
studio that Alex works for is in downtown
Cool.
Portland. It's a really cool studio.
What's
And then
it called?
Extension 606.
Yeah, extension 606. Yeah.
Stylized as ext.606. Yeah, we're based in Portland. We just released an album on New Year's, so it's kind of, this is new, it's like as of this project, but it is a priority for me this year to develop and do more shows with this project, and eventually it'd be cool to tour and play some shows. If we have a show in March, it's going to be really cool at Lollipop Shop. That's like with 3 drummer duos. There's like us, there's Man vs. Robot, and then, what's the other one? Is it I can't remember the third group. Brother vs. Robot, sorry. Brother vs. Robot, us, and then I can't remember the third group. I've never heard them, but us, Juice Mouth.
Yeah.
Smash Mouth. Juice Mouth, Brother vs. Robot, and us. But yeah, we're gonna try and find our niche to like figure out what kinds of shows we can hop on and do more. It's exciting because it's a new development. I mean, I feel like the cool thing about music and performing professionally is there's so many settings you can be in and so many things you can choose to do. Like Alex was in a super cool kind of proggy jazz group called Coco Columbia for a couple years and has been, played in actual jazz trios and quartets and stuff, and also been like, he has this group, Rose Tinted, that does like Jay Dilla stuff and a bunch of original hip hop music, and that's the turntablist. Sam Selly's in that group too, so then they also have their own duo project, and then Alex has got like this new thing with one of his roommates, like longtime roommates, that's super cool, called Mains. It's gonna be like also with drums, but with like trumpet and 2 guitars and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's cool, like all these different applications for not only these instruments, but just like all the things that we do. It's kind of nice to be able to live in a bunch of different worlds. Any other
And if
questions?
you're over 21, you can catch me at the Goodfoot tomorrow night.
Yes, catch him at the Goodfoot. Lots of great shows. Definitely, if you have social media, follow it. It's Al Meltzer Face Off is his Instagram. If you have a hard time finding it, if you see my name spelled on the poster, or his name, it's like on the poster outside of the door, you should be able to find it. But he plays lots of shows. He's got a Thirsty City residency, playing there all the time, and then just a bunch of projects, like all sorts of music, so I'd highly recommend it. Any other questions from anybody?
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening.